Hey guys, welcome. Thank you for everybody's support in the videos I've done so far, and I'm really liking the feedback. And you guys have given me some really good feedback, and I'm actually bringing this thing to a better level. And you know, Toby, Hayden, Catherine, you guys all raising me up a little bit here, and I appreciate that. So today we're going to talk about inks, and I'm not even going to say magical inks because, yes, in my mind, all ink is magical. You don't have to formulate your own inks to use in practice. Whatever you're doing, runes, seagulls, writing in your book of shadows or whatever, you don't need a specifically tailored magical ink. However, if it interests you and it resonates with you that this is something that will bring your craft to the next level, then hopefully you'll learn a couple things here. I am a professional artist, graphic designer by career. I have been working with inks since the early 1980s, so I know a thing or two about ink, or should I say pigment in general. Specifically, we're talking about here, which would be dip pen inks. Although there are some great, really great things, and hopefully I can cover this later on. Some really great gadgets that have come out where you can actually fill a brush pen up with your own whatever, any kind of pigment, water or otherwise. So we'll get into that, but okay. So you want to do some magical inks. I would absolutely suggest to you that you get your hands on this book, which is Scott Cunningham's complete book of incense, oils, and brews. He has probably the most cohesive writing on inks that I've seen. I mean, I have several books that cover inks, but the way, I mean, he has an entire chapter on inks. Now, this is what I'm going to tell you in how I approach you crafting my own inks. Is the first thing to do is you have to create a base tincture. Now, I'm going to do a video just on how to do tinctures, but this is going to cover how to do tinctures. I'm only going to cover one particular ingredient, and that is dragon's blood. Now, to me, being an artist and a graphic designer, like I said, all inks are magical in my mind. There is no ink that you can't use for magical purposes. I don't care if it's this or this. It doesn't matter. It's the intent. You're putting it on paper. You're putting it on yourself. Ink. Historically, ink goes back as body painting. Yes. So let's talk a little bit about like why inks are magical. Well, ink basically was the next level of magic from chiseling words into stone. It gave the people ability to put cohesive thoughts down onto papaya, the first recorded historical paper. Although that could be argued in the Chinese probably did rice paper before that, but I'm not covering that. So you know, next to fire, ink was a huge magical discovery because you could take your thoughts and you could put them somewhere and then you could look at that the next day. It was a magical concept the first time it came up. That remains. A fire still remains magical. Smoke, all of how we use the elements in magical practice. But for this lesson, I'm going to keep it pretty straightforward, and try to cover easy method to more complex and say intent specific inks. And I'm going to cover them very, very quickly. So the basics apply across the board. Let's talk about the most basic magical ink you can make would be made with what's called lamp black. Basically, early historical inks, basically they would take and we would use a spoon now, but any metal utensil that would oxidize being held over a flame, candle, fire, whatever, your cauldron, got your little cauldron here. And basically what happens after about 30 to 40 seconds of holding it over a flame, and you got to kind of get it where it's the flame is just kissing it, and carbon will begin to build up and black. And you'll do that for 30 to 40 seconds. And then you take a razor blade or an X-Acto blade and you would scrape the black off. And that is lamp black. It's just carbon. Now, you would take that, you would use some water, distilled water if you can use distilled water, and then you would add something that would thicken it up. And the most common ingredient, well, actually historically, the most common ingredient would be gum arabic, which just happens to be the ingredient we still use. Even if you're doing art and stuff like that, it's used in bakery items and stuff like that to make something stiff. So, with that said, the most basic would be you would do your lamp blacking for 30 to 60 to 90 minutes until you had enough black carbon to add a little bit of water to, a little bit of gum arabic so that it flowed out of the pen, and then you would dip it in and then use that for your writings. I have made black lamp once. And I think I probably put about 2.5 to 3 hours into it. And I don't even remember if it was good. I think I would remember if it wasn't good. But it was a learning experience, and I can say I did it. But that was probably like 28 or 29 years ago. So, historically, that is your first magical ink, black lamp, and Cunningham covers it in his book. You can use blackberries as a pigment. You can use beets as a pigment. Anything in nature that you find stains can be made into an ink. So, with that said, what I do here with how I approach it is I kind of combine the old world with the new, in that I'm creating what I consider extremely intent strong tinctures. Now, I'm going to cover what a tincture is. What I've been working on, this one is probably a week old at this point. It is Dragon's Blood. It is this tincture, Dragon's Blood tincture, is basically the base of nearly every modern magical ink. It is the base of Dragon's Blood ink, Bat's Blood ink, and Does Blood ink. And just some other ingredients added or subtracted later on, you can get any of those three inks. And then hundreds of others depending upon what your intent is to use with the ink. So, with that said, let's get down to the basics. I'll show you how I put a tincture together for Dragon's Blood specifically, and then we'll see how we apply this to an ink. All right, look. This is Dragon's Blood resin. Traditionally, this is not what you would use for the base pigment for Dragon's Blood ink. Unfortunately, it has become extremely expensive and extremely hard to get the Cinnabari version of Dragon's Blood. This is what's called the Draco version. I don't know why. It has to do with region, I'm sure, but it doesn't have the pigment that you get from the Cinnabari, which is deep and dark and red and like blood. But this is what I'm using, and it doesn't matter that this doesn't have the pigment because we're going to address that later, but it has the intent, it has the ingredients. So what we're going to do first is in this video, I had already ground up probably a quarter ounce already. Whoops. And yeah, that happens. Dragon's Blood is super easy to grind and really get into a fine powder, which is what you want. And I will say this across the board: tinctures in general, you want to get as fine a powder, whatever your ingredient is. And you can see this came out really good. And yeah, I was a little disappointed. I thought this was going to have a little more pigment, but it doesn't matter. It's the ingredients, right? It's the ingredients, it's the intent. So, with that said, we get this down to a nice fine powder. Do. Now, we are going to create a Dragon's Blood tincture from this. A tincture is merely a combination of a herb or resin and a 95%, that's what I use anyway, at least a 95% grade alcohol. Now you'll see in the video here, and I sped it up, it is a real pain in the ass to get this powder into a 2-ounce bottle. Now these are little 2-ounce bottles I got on Amazon. They're really good. Do yourself a favor, don't tighten the caps too much. They can break. I add a little bit of the gum arabic to it. This is an unnecessary step because gum arabic does not actually dissolve in alcohol. But in my belief system, I think it still leaches on to the other herbs that I am dissolving in this. And I think ultimately it helps later on. And then, of course, what the whole point of a tincture is 95% alcohol by volume. I use Everclear. Whatever corn alcohol you can get,
anything above, in my opinion, anything above 70% is going to be great. Um, Scott Cunningham said vodka was fine. Um, I actually had a discussion with him about that one time, and we did not see eye to eye. But he got my point, and I got his point. Um, yeah, I missed the guy. So anyway, I use about twice as much alcohol to resin. I will seal that up, and you will now shake this daily for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks. Now, the amount of weeks is totally up to you. I probably, in my mind, the longer I let this sit and become truly distilled, the better. And my theory is that if I'm making my own ingredients, I want it to be as strong and potent as possible.
Okay. So we've got our tincture. This is Dragon's Blood. This only has about 2 weeks on it. I would normally give it a lot more. But you're going to see that it's not going to really have the pigment that we're going to want. And I'll do this real quick with a brush, just to give you guys an example. That's an idea of what the pigment is after 2 weeks. And that is because this is not really the dragon's blood that was used for inks. It's dragon's blood. It has the same elements. It's going to have the same magical properties to it. So don't worry about that. I mean, look, here's my book of shadows. I'll do a little for no apparent reason. Nice. Almost made it, Jeff. There we go, a little better. So you can use tinctures for any reason. It just happens to be that dragon's blood is what's used for inks, because the old school dragon's blood was the stuff. Now, here we have Winsor and Newton ink. These are the finest products you will ever find in art. This is pure, beautiful pigment. Look at that. I'm just doing this with a brush. Gorgeous. And you can use this ink for any purpose. Now, here's the thing. A beautiful ink that has pure properties to it. I mean, this is the best that you will ever get on the planet for an ink. So why not just empower it and not worry about, the lesser pigmented products we can get now? No. So what you do is you add a few drops of this beautiful ink, and then you add a few drops of your absolutely beautiful dragon's blood. Now, you know what? This actually has a great consistency. This is like gouache. Look how beautiful that is. Perfect. So, I've just empowered some ink with my beautiful dragon's blood into this incredibly beautiful deep red ink. This is what it's all about. This is what you want. You want to be able to do these things, and this is empowered ink. What do you think? It's fun and it's empowering. So do it. You guys can do it. Now, I'm going to cover a little bit on how to make different inks in a separate video. And I decided that tonight because I can do another 30 minutes on just doing different inks. So let's do that. Okay? You got the basics. Make some inks. Go do it. And I'm going to do a second video just on specific magical intention inks. So what we covered tonight was a basic magical ink. Several, I think we covered. But hey, you want to do the black lamp? Go ahead. Try.